to the FRV Library, where I share the books that shape my sailing philosophy and continue to help me become a more knowledgeable, skilled, and proficient sailor. Welcome to the FRV Library, where I share the books that shape my sailing philosophy and served as the foundation of my sailing education. Remember, I'm not telling you what you should read, but sharing what I read and why it was and still is important to me. There are a lot of books that have been useful to me, but I wanted to start off with one book that perhaps is the most important, since it influenced the boat I chose to be my voyaging boat. And that's The Self-Sufficient Sailor, written by Lin and Larry Pardey, and first published in 1982. My copy is the second edition, published in 1997. The most recent edition was published in 2019, and I saw a digital copy just before it was released. It's been greatly revised and expanded, so if you're interested in this book, that's the one to buy. If you don't know much about the Pardeys, I'd encourage you to read Herb McCormick's excellent Pardey biography as long as it's fun, or at least read the Wikipedia entry on them so you have a sense of their contribution to the sailing and voyaging community. The Self-Sufficient Sailor was written after their first voyage around the world, so it comprises their lessons learned during that 11-year east-about circumnavigation. It was a heck of an adventure, and it's chronicled in a 4-book series starting with Cruising in Seraphim. I've read it several times. Keep in mind, there ain't going to be anything in this book about engines, chart plotters, GPS, 12-volt systems, lithium battery banks, water makers, mechanical refrigeration, or Starlink. Remember, this book was written about a simple, uncomplicated, rugged, self-sufficient sailing machine. So why is this book important to me 43 years after it was first published? Well, I'd already been sailing for over 30 years when I first read it. I'd done a lot of racing in both dinghies and keel boats. I had lived and sailed aboard a cruising boat as a kid, so I had a fair amount of experience already. But I didn't have a good grip on my sailing philosophy. I just knew I wanted a voyaging boat of my own. I didn't know exactly what I wanted in a boat or the why behind it. While I had a predilection for keeping things simple from my experience in the Marines, when I read The Self-Sufficient Sailor, the overall philosophy of the value of simplicity afloat began to resonate in a way I could understand and appreciate with conviction. It just made sense to me. The bottom line is, The Self-Sufficient Sailor explained to me how the Pardeys were able to have such a great adventure on the small, simple, engine-free 24-foot Seraphim. By then, their motto was go small, go simple, but go now. I think this philosophy remains as relevant today, if not more so, than it was decades ago. Sailboats are more complicated than ever. The whole marine industry is designed to make you think you need a lot of complex equipment to be safe and comfortable, when in reality, you don't need the vast majority of that stuff. In my experience, the more complicated the boat, the more unhappy and frustrated the skipper and crew. More on that another time. There are 40 chapters in The Self-Sufficient Sailor, covering a wide range of topics. Many of the topics were useful to me, such as maneuvering under sail, why it's important for your significant other to be able to sail and not just be a passenger, how to rig and use a sculling oar, how to build bulwarks, the art and science of anchoring defensively, why it's important to reduce windage and keep your decks clear, what you need in an abandoned ship kit, and what tools to carry on a voyaging boat. There's a great chapter on how to rig and employ an instant whisker pole, which is exactly how I rig the pole on the Far Reach today. There's a very useful chapter on reefing protocols to keep your helm balanced when the wind picks up, supported by simple to understand diagrams. And throughout the book, Larry hammers home the importance of keeping your boat uncomplicated so it's less likely to break down, so you can maintain it yourself. This book contains a lot of useful information, especially if you haven't figured out the kind of boat you want, or if you already have a boat but you're unsure how to set it up for voyaging in an affordable way. Now let me digress for a moment and talk about the value of being able to maintain and repair your own boat. In the 5 decades I've been sailing, in the 24 years I've owned the Far Reach, it's become very clear to me how completely unsatisfied so many sailors are with the work performed on their boats by the professionals. There's no question it's going to cost you a lot more than was quoted. It's going to take longer than you think. And if you have any kind of standards, there's a very good chance you won't be happy with the quality of the work performed. Rare will be the exception to this fact of sailing life. And in the islands, it's going to be far worse. I've seen it firsthand more times than I can count. I could regale you with stories that'll make you mad and break your heart at the same time. The idea that you can get other people to repair your boat or equipment on your schedule in a manner you'll be completely satisfied with is a fantasy. The Pardeys convinced me to keep my boat simple, which not only makes it easier to maintain, but also makes it easier to sail. It's more rugged, more reliable. They call it unstoppable. The mantra of self-sufficiency was always on my mind throughout the rebuild of the Far Reach. This book resonated with me so strongly, I incorporated many of its ideas. So it influenced me in a very tangible, physical way. But the real value of the self-sufficient sailor is it helped me get a grip on how the physical aspect of creating a rugged, seaworthy boat is integral with the philosophical aspects of self-sufficiency. In other words, one fits with the other. While some of their ideas might be considered almost primitive by today's standards, it's the philosophy contained in the self-sufficient sailor that, for me, stands the test of time, and which continues to be a big part of how I equip and sail the Far Reach. There are, of course, many other books that have helped me improve my sailing skills, and we'll talk about them another time. But as for the self-sufficient sailor, I think the third edition will make a great place to dive into gaining some perspective, how and why it's important to keep things simple if you want a rugged, capable boat that you can afford to sail and maintain yourself. And if you don't want to maintain it yourself, keeping it simple and uncomplicated will make it more likely you can find someone who can. If you've read The Self-Sufficient Sailor and it influenced you, tell us about it in the comment section. Also, if you have examples of how you benefited from having a simple, uncomplicated boat, or just the opposite, and had a bad experience with an overly complex boat, share that in the comment section too. See you in the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode of Far Reach Voyages, let us know in the comments. Also, if you like and subscribe, it helps promote the video so others can enjoy it too. See you in the next episode.